People always ask us, what is your criteria for choosing whether it's a movie or a TV show or a book or a video game? How do we pick the mazes that we pick? And we've had a criteria that has not changed since 2006, and it's three things. The first thing is awareness, and that quite simply means popularity. Does it have a fan-based box office? More importantly these days, is there a release in our window of the event? And it's really simple. It's publicity, right? It's so much easier to market things if people A, know what they are, and B, want to go see them. This is just a really quick slide that just shows some of the, it's not even all the properties that Chris and I have done over the years for Halloween Horror Nights, but they all fall into that category. The next thing is environments, and this really speaks to Chris's work. We will only do things that we think have great potential for great scenic environments, iconic environments, environments that we can reproduce. This is key for Chris in a live attraction. I'm going to flip to the other.
We always have a budget, and if something like John's talking about is the environment, it has a really cool frontal. That obviously helps.
I've noticed your frontals have gotten larger.
Yeah, they used to be that big. Yes,
like Walking Dead this past year.
We were down in a new area, and within that new area, really kind of felt that we had to kind of fill a little bit of space, so we stretched a little bit.
Filled a lot of space for that one. I remember looking at his drawings and going, oh my God, we can't afford this, but somehow we did.
We did.
And you probably recognize a lot of the ones up there. Really quick one from right to left, up the top. Actually, this is your work. Why don't you do you recognize your frontals?
Yes, I.
Okay, let's test you on it.
Oh.
Here, I'm going to play this.
Yes.
Here, what's this, Chris?
Walking Dead Hospital. That's the first year we did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Evil Dead last year in our cabin.
Okay,
that's great.
A little tricky.
Okay. Texas Chainsaw.
Which one? The original one.
Yes. That's the kitchen scene. The Thing. Which I love that because we were able to block it, make it look like snow in Antarctic. It was really, really cool, actually. So Loxy. Yeah. Okay. Alice Cooper in the final room of the Frozen in Hell.
And down there?
That's a Saw. Yes, and that is
Corpsey there in the middle?
And La Llorona. Okay. Okay.
Sorry. Sorry, I had to practice that a lot. And then the last thing we look for is great characters, iconic characters that we can again replicate in a live attraction. And the example I always use in this, as much as I love The Shining, and it's one of my favorite horror movies of all time, there's a reason why we've never done The Shining, besides the fact that we could never get the rights. It's how do you find like 15 Jack Nicholsons? And that's really one of the things that we really look at.
And trying to find 15 Jack Nicholsons or 15 people that look alike to put them in the maze, because toward at the end you'd be like, who is that? Who is that? That's very, very difficult to pull off.
So this is some examples of the work of, I don't know if he's in the audience.
Yeah,
there he is.
Larry, do you have a booth this year?
I do.
You guys got to make sure you go and check out Larry's booth before you, and same with me, before you leave today, actually, check it out.
Larry's been our main makeup artist, his company Boneyard Effects, since we've brought this thing back in 2006, so we've worked together every single year. And Larry has so many great makeup artists that are talented sculptors, and that's really what you're talking about when you're talking about makeup.
Yes.
And then, I won't make you run through every single one, but you can point out a few.
Upper left, Unmasked Jason. That's one of my favorites, actually. That's so cool. And then in the middle, House of Thousand Corpses, tiny. And then, what I want to key on also is then the bottom right. That was our version of the Bicycle Girl. And then if you look and see next to it, we don't have a sculpture, actually. We've got some concept little renderings there and Photoshop renderings of kind of how we did the effect, actually. We had to dig in the ground and basically create a concrete bunker, almost. And it was really intense, actually, to do that construction-wise, actually. So it wouldn't cave in, essentially. So
remember when we put the guy for well walker and thing? and we were talking, and there's always 10 people around. We'll show you an example in a second, but these crazy effects we do, we really have to think about every possible situation. And one of our tech people, we're putting the well walker guy in his hole for the first time for Walking Dead. And one of our tech guys go, well, you know, in worst case scenario, and the actor's eyes just lit up, and he goes, worst case scenario? What's worst case scenario? And I'm like, well, you know, if you get stuck in here, you know, there's a lot of wildlife on the universal backlot, you know, a coyote could eat you. He was like, like, no, dude, no coyote's gonna come in here, it's cool. Actually, one I want to point out that I think is some of my favorite work, Hostel, down there in the lower right. I thought that was amazing, the way they made the helmets for the clients in Hostel, because when we worked with Eli Roth, we actually, you know, Eli has everything from Hostel. He saved everything, and he was showing us the masks, and they're incredibly heavy.
Yes.
And we're like, Jesus, Eli, that's going to kill our actors, you know?
Yes.
And so Larry and his crew, particularly I think Jen Rhodes, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Larry's crew worked with us to make a mask that looked metal, but was like super, super light.
Yeah, it was great.
And Eli donned that. He came down and hung out one night, and he acted in Hostel, and he went through every single scene playing that character. You probably didn't even know. All right now we're going to take you through the process that Chris and I use whenever we create a maze. And the example we're going to use is the most popular maze last year from you guys, from the guests. The maze that was voted the highest, because every night we do surveys in the park. And last year, your favorite maze was Insidious. And I have to give all of you guys credit, because the reason, you know, we did Insidious, a lot of it has to do with how many times we saw our fans ask us for it. There was a strange connection to La Llorona here. The way Insidious started, if you remember this, I was in the park that year. We were doing La Llorona, the second time we did La Llorona, and my phone kept ringing. And I picked it up, and it was James Wan, the director of Insidious and Conjuring and many other films, and soon Fast and Furious 7. And James was like talking about La Llorona, but I was up at the top deck around the chainsaw performer, so to me it just sounded like, I just went to, you know, it just screams and everything, and I'm like, James, I can't hear you, I can't hear you. And so eventually, you know, I called him back, and he just kept raving about La Llorona, particularly Chris's art direction in La Llorona, which is phenomenal. So, and he was like, we gotta work with you guys, we gotta work with you guys, you know. And so, we all got together. That is the key players when it comes to Insidious. That's Jason Blum from Blumhouse Films, who's a good friend of ours. Lee Wannell, the writer of Insidious. He also plays Specs in the movie. And James Wan. I have to tell a quick story here because it's really, really funny. So we go over to Blumhouse Films, Chris and I, you remember this. And we sit down, and Lee Wannell comes up to me and he goes, yeah, I got to tell you something. I'm like, okay. He's like, you know, we didn't get to work together when you did Saw, which was true because by the time we did Saw, they were on Saw 5?
Yes,
5 or 6?
Yes.
So those guys had done the original Saw film, but they moved on and they weren't currently involved with it, so we never got to work together. And Lee goes, well, you know, I was so excited that somebody was doing a haunted house or maze based on one of my films. So he's Australian. He goes, I got all my friends from Australia, we all came to Universal. We got to that first scene. Do you remember Saw, the bathroom scene where Dr. Gordon sawed off his leg? And Lee was all excited because much like an actor, you know, who has an action figure made after him, he was like, I'm going to get to see an actor playing me. And he thought that was like the coolest thing. And he knew he was somewhere in the scene. So he was walking around that bathroom set, looking for it, and he saw some feet underneath a curtain. And he ran up and pulled the curtain back and scared the hell out of our actor. And then he felt a tap on the shoulder. And he turned around and there was this guy with a radio, and he's like, excuse me, sir, you need to come with me. And he's like, well, what's the problem? He's like, you need to come with me. He's like, well, am I in trouble? He said, yeah, you're in trouble. And they went back, they took him backstage. They took the whole group of them backstage. And his friends were like on IMDb with his picture going, this is the guy who wrote Saw. And other people are going, yeah, sure. And they kicked him out. And so this is how we started the pitch. Chris and I are going there to try to go, hey, we're going to work together, we're going to do Insidious. And Lee tells me that story, and I said, don't screw their characters, Lee. and so he obviously did come down and hang out in Insidious. But so this is a maze. I'm going to explain how we create these things. It's kind of kooky.
It is really kooky. You know, we weren't sure at the beginning when we started talking about Insidious, because we've never done anything paranormal before.
You were resistant.
Yeah, we were a little resistant. But you know, when you look at that and the films of that the ghosts and the demons actually are physical, and they can touch you and you can touch them. So we felt very comfortable that we could move forward on it.
So what we do, this is actually a picture from my office. That's actually the first Halloween Horror Nights poster. Somebody gave that to me, and I've never even framed it. It's still sitting on the floor of my office. It's been there like for 5 years. We use Post-it notes, and we put up little notes on my wall of my office, and they're characters, scenes, you know, actions, audio, special effects, and that's actually the Insidious maze. We use Post-it notes because as we're putting it together, you know, we'll change our mind, we'll make tweaks, we'll change things, so it's just really easy to take those little Post-it notes off and put them around. But once we basically got a flow, as we would call it, together, that and Chris and I have to 100% agree on it. We have a deal going back to 2006. If he doesn't want something in it, or I don't, it doesn't go in the maze. So we have to 100% agree on it. Once we do, I write a treatment. This is just a couple random pages from the Insidious treatment. These tend to be, especially now, I've got like more
4 pages long.
Yeah, I write like War and Peace every year, you know, for Horror Nights. But there's a real specific reason for it. You can see on the top, it says talent, hand props, scenic, props and decor, audio, video. We're calling out every single detail of the maze, and then it's written from a guest POV like you're going through it. It's calling out all the audio cues, every special effect. And then I write this giant, enormous document and I hand it to Chris.
And at the same time, I'm taking our area. So this is in JPQ, and this is in a tent, and the tent is 40 by 100, so 4,000 square feet. So essentially, as you can see, I'm taking every bit of space, and I even have to create like a tech room for our techs. And almost every year I start to choke those guys out because I want to just put in more stairs.
Really small. They go, hey, we can't work.
I mean, you can see even around the perimeter, I've got some closets around the perimeter that we've got characters that are coming in and out of actually. So I take up every bit of that space as well. And then this will help define if we kind of have to go back into the treatment or even back on our post-up board and actually remove a few rooms or a room or something.
And then after Chris does the floor plan, then they've got to draw every, you tell them, every single wall.
Yes, we do a huge, massive show set packages, actually, that we'll take each room on the ground plan, and then you see it in the bottom corner. Well, maybe not so much this one, but there is a ground plan.
I have another one.
Yeah, there's another one. Boom. And the bottom right. So that's the ground plan piece that's in the overall ground plan of the Red Demon's Lair. And you can see that on those elevations that, you know, most of this is red fabric. And that's what, you know, what we really try to do is reproduce that scene in the film exactly how it was shot. And, you know, we get tons of photographic reference.
Yeah, on this one, let's see. Well, Evil Dead, I went to Sony.
Yes,
I went to Sony. I went through 10,000, 11,000 pictures. Every time there's a movie, there's always a photographer, always on set, clicking pictures. It's called location photography. So what I need to get for Chris is all those visual references of the set. So I usually go to the studio. In Evil Dead's case, I went to Sony. I went through 10,000 pictures to find a couple of hundred that I get for Chris. There's another movie that I cannot name that will be featured at the event this year that I went through and I brought him this time because I was like, I need your help because you haven't seen it yet. 38,000 pictures. He and I went through. We were on 2 computers just going. It's crazy. I can't look at this anymore. But that's what we need to do because we have to find all the reference. I like this one just because it's just a tiny little insert of the previous page, but it shows how many call-outs.
Oh my gosh, tons of call-outs, actually. And this actually, you know, I'm hiring set designers that I oversee. So the first one actually that we saw, which you don't have to go back with the frontal, individual Jim Hewitt. You know, most of these guys are actually in the guild. and actually the Set Designers Guild that are doing like A-film work. So like Jim, he's been on Avengers, and he's also tons of films.
He's been, most of the guys that Chris gets are film and TV production designers.
Yeah, he just got done with Hunger Games 3, actually. So,
and we're really lucky because these guys are so loyal to Chris. They come back every single year because they love working on horror nights.
Yeah, Jim has worked for me for like 15 years, actually. So, and you know, these guys, you know, we're trying to do film quality, and they get that. So, you know, they're reproducing exactly like what they're doing, like for other film directors and other art directors and production designers, and they're all, you know, we all draw by hand. So that's, you know, most things are changing.
I'm going to restate what you just said. They draw by hand.
Yes.
This is an age where everybody's so used to computers, digital, and if you're aspiring to be an artist or working in production design, it's so important.
So when we're doing these show set packages, to me, it's like I want to communicate the flavor of what we're trying to get at. So when you look at that curtain, if I wanted it tattered, you'd see it tattered. I'd make these guys illustrate it. And so what I'm looking for is a guy who can draw by hand that also can illustrate really, really well, actually. And this was done by a guy named Troy Zimmerman, who actually was one of our performers.
Yeah.
But he actually graduated from architecture school. He went a 5-year program, actually, at Cal College.
Every once in a while, well, not every once in a while, every single year, you always have people who come up to you, whether they're working the event as a performer or some other aspect, you go, how do I get to do what you do? This is one of those cases where one of our performers came to us and said, I have this background. Chris brought him in, looked at his portfolio. He's been drawing for us ever since.
Yeah,
and he's still a performer.
Yes.
He's in The Walking Dead movies last year,
yes,
right?
He was.
Yeah, he's a hell of a walker. When we talked about drawing for a second, Lucas Coleshaw, I don't think Lucas is here today.
Is Lucas here today?
Yeah. He is?
Yes.
Lucas?
Okay. I didn't
He didn't even come to our panel. Now he's fired. He's been working for us since 2006. He's done
most illustrations that you do see online and like through Facebook and such, and these are the illustrations that we take and give to like Larry and other effects artists that we do use. Mostly actually come from Lucas, which, there we go. There we go.
I didn't know that was going to happen. And this is an example of what we use Lucas for. So this is obviously the old woman.
Yeah. And then we were trying to capture the very end of the first Insidious film where the old woman comes right up to the camera, actually. So, you know, with no eyes and grinning and baring her teeth. And that's what we were trying to get for the end of the maze. So, yep. And then this is her baring her teeth. And this is actually from Larry Bones' studio.
And that's the sculpt of the old woman. And then this is the final product, both the costume, that's our costume team, the Universal Studios Hollywood, and the mask made by Bones. That's at our press event.
And that's our other mask. So we made two. Yeah, we have one at the end, and then this one that we would see most way through with a creepy smile. There it is again.
And then that's the final product in the maze.
Yep.
And then we just wanted to share some little details. You know, Chris and I, we always want to put in little details in every single maze we create for Horror Nights to be authentic to the film, but also for all the people who are really, really into a particular property so they can pick up on it. Insidious, obviously, in the second film, there's the baby stroller. And I should explain why my name is like plastered over it. In order to get now the film's released and it's not a big deal anymore. But I have to sign away my life every single time we get pictures from a movie that hasn't come out yet. So I have to, like, you know, every picture has my name plastered all over it. But there's that creepy baby stroller, and in the first scene, and I think I have it up there in the house, that's some of the cast of Insidious. We wanted that thing to start, turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off randomly. As you're going through that maze, you may have seen it come on, you may not have. It's just a little detail we put in. It was actually something that James wanted. Do you remember James, when we first met, he had a very specific opinion.
Yes.
And he was like, I don't want any scares in the first scene. And do you remember our reaction?
Our reaction is like,
that's what we do.
Yes, it is what we do. And actually, from the top of Universal, we are like told, like, we want scares right off the bat.
But in this case, James was right, because Insidious, he should know, he's the director of the film. He really felt you needed to build it up. And so this comes directly from James. the idea of putting the baby stroller.
Yeah, we tried to get like, you know, a feeling of paranormal activity where we had a couple lamps in there that the energy's being sucked out of the lamps, and then actually the baby stroller kicks on, and then you would notice the baby stroller a lot better. But, you know, this is really a pass-through room actually before you get into the first hallway.
And people, I know, I'm just going to say this because I saw the question a lot on Twitter. People were like, what was that one scene with the door just floating in space? It was the back of that door.
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't anything. We weren't trying to put anything in there like special. It was just like, oh, shoot, you can see the back of that door.
I was hoping that no one was going to look up and actually see the back of that door, because unfortunately I can't afford to paint completely everything. If I paint that door, you know, it's a couple $100, honestly.
Yeah, the seance scene, just a few details in the seance scene. You know, here's the scene where she puts the gas mask on for the film. I don't know if Tony Lindis is in the house.
Is he in here?
Tony?
No. Well, Tony.
He's fired too.
He's fired. Tony's here today. Yeah,
Tony's here.
Tony's our props guy, and his lead is another individual named Richard Mayer. And those guys, you know, when you make a cake, it's so much better with the frosting on it. And that's what Tony has. He has that layer of frosting that really just makes everything just really visually taste so much better.
And they made this. They actually made this figure, and if you went through the seance scene, she was shuddering and twitching and freaking out just like in the
She had a little offset motor inside her back that was twitching and moving her. They also made the baby stroller as well, with all the lights and all the sound effects as well.
And just another detail, I think I put it in the treatment with the idea that, you know, Specs is sitting there with his journal documenting everything, and there's also that lantern. It's really iconic. Actually, James's first comment to us was, hey, it would be really cool if everybody gets a lantern. You know, do you remember this? That was in the first pitch meeting. He was like, everybody should get a lantern, and I'm like, it's going to be a bloodbath, James. I can't give everybody a lantern, because people's natural reaction when they get scared is their hands fly up, you jump, you fight or flight. So the thought of like the guy behind you getting clocked in the face with a lantern, it just didn't go there. But we wanted to make sure to include it in the maze, and there it is in the seance scene, and there's Specs' journal. Another scenic detail in the lair of the Red Demon. There's that weird box in the lower corner. I have no idea, what it is, but it's in the movie. You see the hand coming out of it. And there it is in the maze. Tony's crew made that along with all those freaky marionette dolls.
Yeah, we really hit those details as best as we can.
And then there's that really creepy scene in Insidious 2. And I have to mention, a lot of times when we're doing this, we're taking a leap of faith. We didn't see Insidious 2 before we designed the maze. We read the script because the movie was being filmed. We went and saw an early cut of it. But we read the script, read the scene where the kid's hiding under the sheets. So again, Tony's crew created this guy. And it was like a little kid hiding in the sheets.
Yep, and he was rocking back and forth it had another little offset motor on the inside of it. So it looked as though he was so scared, he was like shaking, he was frightened.
And then just a couple other details there's that creepy bedroom, little girl's bedroom with the rocking horses. There's also a dollhouse in that scene. And once again, here's our rocking horses. These guys all moved and
creating a paranormal gag.
And then they actually built the dollhouse. It looked just like the one in the film. So that's a tribute to Tony and all of our prop guys. And then there's the body room. And this was really challenging because imagine being a live performer.
Yes.
Playing one of these roles.
Live performer, under a sheet, can't breathe very well, can't see very well.
And you're tied up at the same time. And these are the static figures in the maze. But the body room was really important to recreate, and here's a scene from, before
the one that's standing up on the right. I laid out this room, and I knew where every fake one and where the real ones, we had openings for them. And there was times where I'd come in and go, okay, which one's which? And I would get scared, actually. They'd trick me.
Absolutely. And that's a trick. The reason, besides the films were great and everything, but I think the reason why you guys loved Insidious so much, I have to give it up for the cast.
Oh, yeah.
The cast of that was phenomenal. And they were completely on fire, and they never stopped. And I went through it at 2 o'clock in the morning, I went through it at 9 o'clock, 7 o'clock. They were always consistent, and they were always great. And that's really what it comes down to. And I just put this in because this is my Insidious experience. I had a daughter during production part of Horror Nights, development part last year. And this is from the press junket for the film.
Yes.
And when I was in the hospital, right after my daughter was born, that's when I actually read Insidious, too. That's when I read the script. And I'm reading all that creepy stuff with the baby, and I'm in a hospital in the middle of the night going, this is messed up, man. I can't read this. And Lee Wannell also had a kid right at the same time. So I didn't have a babysitter, so I had to bring her to the press junket for the movie. So in between filming interviews, I was up there like bottle feeding my daughter.
I'm surprised I didn't see John today walking in with rolling a stroller.
No, I got better at that. We're going to share a few more secrets about some of the other mazes from last year. This is Evil Dead, Book of the Dead, and of course that's the cabin from the film. I loved this set that Chris created. And I don't know if you picked up on it, but it had a floor. And I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but maybe you could talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, we used like what you could use outside on your porch called Trex, like a Trex material that if it got wet, it wouldn't start to buckle up or anything. So yeah, we wanted to add a real floor that we could actually add the hatch that goes down into the cellar. That was very important for us.
And then another thing about this particular maze is there was so many practical effects, and that was true of the movie as well. This is one, you remember this in the movie when they slipped the tongue.
Yeah.
We wanted to do this. Really, really difficult. Yes. Chris came up with this brilliant idea, and Larry executed it. You can explain.
Larry Bones. Yeah, give it up. That's our actual cutting your tongue. Yeah, I'm like, Larry, we got this effect, and he's like, oh, piece of cake. Mouth guard, silicone tongue, basically, that she can come out, and she's basically, guarding down on the mouth guard.
Like what a boxer would wear.
Yep, and it's attached to a silicone split tongue, and I was like, brilliant!
So it's weird to go backstage and see all these tongues.
Yes.
Because obviously we didn't make them share tongues. That would be disgusting. Another one, Chris and I went and saw this movie pretty early at Sony, way before it came out, and we were like, oh my god, we got to do the blood puke scene.
Yes.
This one scared the hell out of me. I was like, I don't know how you're going to do this.
We got to do it. I know we had to do it. So
this is how we did it.
Came up with essentially an idea where we had a live performer underneath, a fiberglass body, very lightweight, over her, and that the performer underneath was going to get puked on by water constantly.
All night long.
Yeah, all night long. And
every night.
Have the availability to rotate that head around and push a button. And when they push that button, it would eject out of its mouth a water blast to hit the guests to try to keep them moving forward. We knew guests would stand there and watch this and be like, oh my gosh, and they did. We had to put an actual usher there to keep people moving forward.
And then we brought the actors in very early on in the process. This is all of us. I can tell it's not you or me because we don't wear khakis. It's got to be the tech guys all like hanging out here in their khakis. We brought the performer in early. We worked with her early so that she would be comfortable and she would understand, what we were asking her to do. And the great thing is that they lasted through the whole run. They didn't quit. Part of the reason we gave them the blast too was so that they could enjoy themselves.
Yes, and they can see reactions of the guests getting sprayed, and as well, like those 50-degree nights. It's really cold, and they hung in there with this. It was ice cold water.
I love when Lucas draws.
Oh, I know.
Because there's always a guy in the corner going, hey!
You don't see those anymore.
I just cracked up. He's like, who is that guy? Why is he doing it? Oh, it's the show.
Yes, it is the show.
At the end of the movie, she chainsaws. If you haven't seen the movie, I'm sorry. But she chainsaws the abomination. And then again, we wanted to do that live where she shoves the chainsaw into this thing's head and shoots blood everywhere. And it's also the blood rain scene. So that's when we were installing the abomination.
Yes.
That's her from the front. It's nasty.
So to do those Mia gags like this abomination, the puker, the one that was in the cellar that we saw the image before, we also had another one that tracked out that was pushed on.
Another button and that controlled the compressed air and water blast, and then do that every 10 seconds. And that's what we train every actor to do. We want them to be on a 10-second, if not less.
For how many times?
We did the math on this a couple of years ago. A performer like her doing this effect, she would have done it 40,000 times.
That's really like when we're thinking through these effects, it's like, I was worried about that one, very complicated to do all this foot maneuvering and trying to make sure they can shove the chainsaw right into its mouth, and it worked out well.
Strangely, the water blast was crotch high. I don't know why. Every time I came out of the maze, I was like, oh! Then we had a little accident. We're real quick about Walking Dead No Safe Haven, particularly this. Here's going to read this in front of our prison. The cast of Walking Dead comes every year. It's great. They all come and check it out. But this is the set that Chris had to build. This is it from a distance. Obviously, the prison. And then this is one of my faves. I mean, this is Cell Block C, a double level set. You could actually go up and stand on that second level.
You actually could, but we blocked it off. But I wanted to make this huge set. Big 18-foot walls that once you just went through a couple little small hallways with a couple holding cells, that boom, there's a big set in the middle of this tent. And I hope that was a very impactful shock to you guys as well.
It was cool. You did a trick. On the second level, there is no depth to those at all.
No.
It's just duvetine behind the bars.
Yes, yeah, there's black duvetine behind them, so not creating the cell. And actually those upper level cells are very short.
And here's the process of just making one walker. And I have to ask Larry, because I don't even know the answer to this. Yeah. How many prosthetics did we make last year for Walking Dead?
I don't know Walking Dead specifically, but 4,000 over the year.
4,000 prosthetics. So what a prosthetic is this. So that was our actor as he comes into makeup. Then he gets a foam latex prosthetic.
Yes. And we at Universal try to explain to our uppers, administration, how difficult of this process is for makeup, and to explain it in terms that they can kind of understand. It's like each prosthetic is like baking a cake, and that's how we try to describe it to them. So when you really think about it, like 4,000 cakes, that's crazy.
It's a lot of cakes.
And they're baking 24 hours a day.
And then this is after that prosthetic's applied. We repaint them so they can at least get a head start on them. Yeah. And then they apply all the blending and all the blood and all the touch-ups, and then you end up with a walker. We wanted to do these guys, the Michonne's Pets. Pretty difficult because they won't let us cut the arms off of people. So Chris came up with this solution, which I thought was brilliant.
We didn't want to make them static figures, just standing there. We wanted to really, bring them to life actually. So, as I was doing like some research and stuff, and looking even like at the toy products and stuff out on City Walk, and I was like, hey, they got a backpack. Hey, that's a place where a performer can slide their arms into and hold a bar, as you can see on the right. And that's what we did, actually. Larry created the front chest piece, and good thing that those guys were muscular, because their lat muscles on the side actually help hide the arms, and it worked really good. I mean, they look great.
And here's the sculpts. Obviously, we work with Greg Nicotero, and we work on Walking Dead, and Greg looks at every single sculpt that Larry's team does, and he proves it, and he gives us notes, and sometimes Greg actually produces pieces for us. But this is our sculpt of Michonne's Pets. Yes. And then this is my favorite scare last year. How many of you guys remember this one? This is his idea, so I'm going to let him give credit where credit is due. This is Chris's idea.
Well, you know what? I pitched to John a couple of times. Like, that's never going to work. Like a couple of times, like, hey, what if we had a door and a guy's like holding the door back, and we had all these walkers like pushing the door, and they're all fake, and the guy's actually acting, and John's like, how scary is that? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. That's not very scary. So we came up with this kind of an idea to simulate our horde coming out through a doorway, like a black-out doorway, where a performer on the opposite side has a camera located where you're walking through, and he's looking at the monitor, and he can time this perfectly, and he also has a trigger where you can create a light, a light and audio sound. So when he pushes it forward, boom.
You get that.
You get like this huge horde coming out at you.
But again, this would not work if it wasn't for the performers.
Yes.
And that's why Chris and I train every single performer in every single maze since 2006. Because without the performers, all the work we do, all the amazing sets that Chris creates, all the great props that Tony creates, all the great makeup that Larry creates, all the great typing and endless words that I create, it just wouldn't mean anything if it wasn't for the performers. And these performers just knocked it out of the park.
Yes.
And it was my favorite scare last year. One more we're going to share with you, then we're going to take some Q&A if we still got time. Black Sabbath 3D 13. Black Sabbath 13 3D. Sorry. I wanted to talk about this just because I'm sure people, I saw a lot of stuff on the internet and they're like, they use that thing from Saw. You don't do anything without purpose, and there was a very specific purpose, but I think it probably eluded the vast majority of you because Black Sabbath, and rightfully so, because it was pretty darn obscure. But if you really look at this picture, there is a Black Sabbath song. It's called Snowblind. It's about cocaine. She is standing in a giant mound of cocaine. She is chained up and her nose is bleeding. Okay, this scene was all about addiction because Black Sabbath, they ought to know.
Yeah, she's all about addiction. She was behind, a jail bars as well, so she's trapped within that.
And this is the original girl from Saw. That's where she came from.
Yes.
But in this case, we're like, oh, that would be cool. Actually, we can pay some tribute. Sometimes we put these really obscure details in, and no one gets them. Like literally no one. I don't think anybody ever got this one, but thought I'd throw it in here. Here's another Chris Williams idea. That was another one of my favorite scares.
The radioactive demon.
You, for years, you were coming to me and going,
we gotta do something, and didn't want, of course, the typical Dobrin kind of thing, but we knew that with those dots, a certain size, that they would work, they would give you, a different viewing to this as we walk in there.
That's the set.
Yeah, that's the set. So, blasting it with UV, and Larry actually created the costumes for that. So, there's the performers right there. Here's another one. Yeah, I'd walk in there and I go, I know he's over here, and I would look and go, is he there? Is he there? And then, and it'd get me. So, it was such a great gag that they were completely camouflaged within all this nuclear goo. Yeah.
And it was so fun to take Ozzy, Geezer, and Sharon, and the kids, and everybody. We took them through opening night. Chris and I did. And it was a trip to work with Sabbath because the idea to do Black Sabbath, that was your idea too. You came to me and said, we should do Sabbath. And I was like, I don't have any connection to Sabbath. I don't know how to get a hold of him. And then the phone rang and it was the manager of Slayer, Rick Sales. And we've known Rick for a number of years. And he was, his parents were in town from England. He wanted to come to the park. And I went, I need a hookup. Get me in touch with Sabbath. And he did. And, Chris and I went to the Beverly Hills Hotel, the Polo Lounge, and pitched this mace to Sharon Osbourne in the Polo Lounge, and it made the deal right there. And Sharon was just fabulous. Yeah. Ozzy was fabulous. Tony and Geezer went out on the road and hung out with them and showed them the maze, and they all came, and they were just like kids. They were just tickled about the whole thing.
If you listen to their music and you really listen to their lyrics and you formulate and put all that together, you could really tell visually that it would really create it's just a really cool experience, actually, a great maze.
Cool. So we're going to make a special announcement at the very end. I just want to check with Perry. How are we doing on time, Perry?
We got about 10 minutes.
10 minutes. If you guys have any questions, let's take a couple of questions. I'll make my announcement and then just...